The room seemed to tighten the moment he walked in. No one really knew his true name, but in Little Tokyo, the sound of his footsteps alone was enough to make people stop breathing. Kaito Yamazaki, the Yakuza boss from Osaka, the man they called the Silent Demon. Hanabira was a restaurant for the elite, the kind of place where even the clink of a knife was practiced like an art. But tonight, when the back door swung open, the only sound left was the ragged heartbeat of everyone inside. Neon light from First Street sliced across the polished floor, sliding over his mirror-shined shoes before freezing on that unreadable face. Two bodyguards led the way, hands hovering near their jackets, a silent warning that one wrong move could erase you from existence. Kaito didn't look at anyone. He walked straight to the VIP table, sat down, unlocked his phone, and spoke. His voice was deep, flat, emotionless. Mizu kudasai. Just 2 words, but they fell like blades. Andre, the Latino floor manager, swallowed hard. Sweat beaded along his collar. He'd served difficult customers before, but never someone who could turn a crowded room into a grave. A waiter tried, "Sir, English?" And the second the words left his mouth, the entire room froze. A wine glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered. The sharp crack of glass sounded like a warning. Kaito looked up. His eyes were dark, bottomless, storm still. He repeated, softer this time, yet sharper than before. "Mizu o kudasai." No one answered. At the far end of the room, behind the counter, a young black woman stood perfectly still. Naomi Ellis, 27, night shift waitress, working to pay for her mother's hospital bills. Nobody remembered when she'd started at Hanabira. She'd always just been there, like part of the furniture. Naomi understood every word the man had said. She'd learned Japanese from her late friend Aiko, who once told her, "Language is the soul of respect." Now she looked around. Everyone was terrified, silent, worshipping fear like it was oxygen. Naomi bit her lip. She knew exactly what he'd said, and she knew if she stepped forward now, nothing in her life would ever be the same. People often say that some moments are so small you don't realize they're changing everything. She lifted a tray, set a glass of water on it, and began to walk toward him. The neon light climbed her face, then caught his, 2 worlds colliding mid-air. "Here's your water," she said softly, then added, in perfect Japanese, "Omizu desu." A ripple of whispers shot through the room like static. Kaito's gaze rose to meet hers, and for the briefest heartbeat, the demon looked as if someone had just spoken to his soul. If you're holding your breath right now, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because this is only the beginning of the storm. Naomi Ellis had learned how to disappear long before she learned how to speak Japanese. Every shift at Hanabira was a quiet rehearsal in invisibility, her posture straight, her eyes down, her words measured to the smallest syllable. When rich customers snapped their fingers, she moved like air. When they complained, she smiled like she'd been trained to since childhood, calm, contained, unshakable. People remembered her tray, never her face. But tonight, something inside her refused to stay small. The way Kaito Yamazaki's words rolled across the room, untranslated, unclaimed, felt like a secret only she was meant to hear. "Mizu kudasai." She'd learned that phrase years ago from Aiko Tanaka, her college roommate who had a laugh that could slice through sorrow. Aiko had said it 100 times during late-night ramen runs. "Naomi, water connects us. No matter the language, we all need it." And then, one rainy night, Aiko was gone, hit by a drunk driver on Western Avenue. Naomi had never used those words again. Now, under the hum of neon and fear, they came rushing back. She saw Aiko's handwriting in the old notebook she still kept folded inside her apron. The little sketches of kanji, the phonetic notes scribbled beside them. The voice that once teased her, "You're better at my language than I am at yours." Andre's eyes darted toward her from across the room, silently begging her to stay put. Every muscle in his face said, "Don't you dare." But Naomi's pulse was already sinking to the rhythm of something larger than fear, something like purpose. She lifted her head, looked straight at the man everyone else avoided, and whispered just loud enough for the closest server to hear. He asked for water. The sentence hit the room like a gunshot muffled in velvet. Heads turned. A chef stopped mid-slice. Someone dropped a fork. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Andre mouthed, "You speak Japanese?" But she didn't answer. She just nodded once, quiet and sure. Across the dining room, Kato's eyes flickered. He didn't smile. But something in his stillness shifted, like a predator noticing a shape it couldn't quite define. For the first time all night, the silence didn't belong to him, it belonged to her. And just like that, the invisible waitress became the only person in the building who spoke the language of the demon. The sound that broke the silence wasn't her voice. It was the soft slide of a chair across marble. "Sit." The command was quiet, but it hit like thunder. Every head in the restaurant turned. Even the air between them seemed to tighten. Naomi froze mid-step, her tray still trembling in her hands. She looked at him, really looked at him. Kato Yamazaki, the man who could silence a room with a glance, now watched her with the sharp focus of a sniper and the calm of a monk. "Sir, I'm working," she said softly. "Sit," he repeated, eyes never leaving hers. It wasn't a request. Andre mouthed a desperate no from the counter, shaking his head. The other waiters retreated like waves pulling away from the shore. Naomi's heart pounded, every instinct screaming to walk away. But something in those eyes, dark, fractured, endless, kept her rooted. Slowly, she slid into the seat across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Just the faint hum of jazz, the drip of condensation down the glass between them. Then Kaito said, in heavily accented English, "Why?" Naomi blinked. "Why what?" "Why do you speak my language?" She hesitated. The truth felt too fragile to survive in this room full of fear, but she told it anyway. "My best friend in college was Japanese. Her name was Aiko Tanaka. She taught me the basics, then made me promise to keep learning. Said understanding another's language teaches you how to listen better." Kaito's expression didn't change, but his gaze sharpened, slicing through every layer of pretense she didn't know she had. "She died 3 years ago," Naomi continued. "Car accident. I never stopped studying after that. It made me feel like she was still around somehow." The bodyguard shifted slightly, but Kaito didn't move. His hand, still resting on the table, clenched once, barely visible, but enough to betray something human. "Kyoto?" he asked quietly. Naomi's eyes widened. "Yes. How did you—" He looked away. "I knew someone once. Same city, same road." For a split second the mask slipped. Beneath the controlled exterior, there was grief, raw, old, and bleeding through the cracks. Naomi saw it, and something inside her softened. Neither spoke again. Their silence was its own language, one made of ghosts, promises, and the fragile connection between two people who weren't supposed to understand each other. And in that charged quiet, Kaito realized something that unsettled him more than any rival ever could. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him, not at him. The moment ended as sharply as it had begun. Kaito pushed back his chair, the leather sighing under his weight. Without looking at her, he reached into his coat, pulled out a folded stack of hundreds, and placed it neatly beside the untouched glass of water. The bills gleamed under the low light, more than Naomi made in 2 months. He stood, smooth, deliberate. One of the bodyguards whispered something in Japanese. Kaito didn't answer. He glanced once, just once, at Naomi, and in that glance lived something she couldn't name. Command, curiosity, danger, all tangled into one. He said only 5 words, deep and quiet, like a verdict. "Next time, only you." Then he walked away. The doors closed behind him with a hush so final it felt ceremonial. The bodyguards followed, their silhouettes swallowed by the night outside. For a few long seconds, nobody in Hanabira moved. Then sound returned, the scrape of plates, a cough, a half-suppressed whisper. The world exhaled. But Naomi couldn't. She stared at the money on the table, the condensation still dripping from the glass, the empty space he'd left behind like a gravitational pull. Andre appeared beside her, pale as porcelain. "What did he just say to you?" Naomi swallowed. "He wants me to serve him next time." Andre's voice cracked. "Only you?" She nodded. "Jesus Christ, Naomi," he hissed, running a hand over his face. "Do you even understand what that means? That man doesn't ask. He owns. You're not a waitress to him. You're a detail he's decided to keep." She blinked. "I didn't do anything wrong." Andre leaned closer, voice low. "People don't survive his attention. I've seen it. The moment you step into his line of sight, you don't get to step out." The words hung between them like smoke. Naomi looked down at the pile of bills again. It wasn't just money. It was a mark, a claim. She told herself it was fine. Just another customer, another shift. But as she wiped the table, her reflection wavered in the glass, her eyes wide, her breath uneven. Outside, through the narrow window, she caught a flash of headlights, black car, tinted windows, idling just long enough for her to notice before disappearing into the rain. And for the first time, Naomi realized this wasn't gratitude. It was a summons. She had been chosen, or maybe claimed. The phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. Naomi blinked into the darkness, half asleep, half dreaming of neon light and obsidian eyes. She reached for it, expecting another overdue notice from St. Mary's Hospital. But when the screen lit up, her breath caught mid-chest. Hospital account, Bourbon, paid in full. Her thumb hovered, numb. She blinked once, twice. The number she'd memorized, 52,000, was gone. Erased like it had never existed. Her mother's debt, the weight that had pinned her chest for years, lifted. Then came the message. Unknown number, no emoji, no signature. Just words that felt like a knife wrapped in silk. Payment for translation. KY. Naomi sat up straight, heart hammering so violently she could hear it in her ears. The apartment was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and her pulse. She reread the text until the letters blurred. She whispered into the dark, "No, no, you didn't." Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering onto the wooden floor. She grabbed it again, scrolling frantically. No reply option, no return address, just a closed door. Morning found her at Hanabira early, trembling fingers gripping a paper cup of coffee. Andre spotted her before the first customers arrived. "You look like hell," he said, half concern, half accusation. Naomi handed him the phone wordlessly. He read the message, then froze. "Payment for translation," he repeated, voice dropping to a whisper. "My God." "What does it mean?" Naomi asked, though she already knew. Andre exhaled sharply. "It means you belong to him now." She flinched. "He doesn't buy things, Naomi. He collects people, favors, silence, loyalty. You think it's generosity?" He shook his head. "That's how he owns them. That's how he keeps his empire running, one debt disguised as kindness." Naomi stared at her phone, throat dry. "I can pay it back." Andre's laugh was short, humorless. "You can't repay a ghost, girl. That transfer came from nowhere, and it's already closed. You try to return it, and you'll just remind him you're still in play." Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady against the glass. Naomi watched each drop trace downward like time itself running out. Her mother's freedom had been bought, but the receipt was written in blood she hadn't spilled yet. Some gifts, she realized, don't save you. They claim you. The first message came long after midnight. "Unknown number. Are you awake?" Naomi stared at the glow of her phone, the room washed in blue light. She hesitated, thumb hovering. Then she typed back, "I am now." Seconds later, 3 dots pulsed. KY, can't sleep. Thoughts too loud, she smirked faintly. Maybe try counting your regrets instead of sheep. There was a pause, long enough for her to think he'd stopped. Then, KY, regret is for the weak. She almost laughed, fingers poised. "So you've never done anything you wish you could undo?" Another pause. KY. Every day. Maybe I'm just getting weak. The words hit harder than they should have. Outside, the city hummed in its insomnia. Sirens, distant thunder, a street lamp flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. Naomi pulled her knees to her chest, the blanket draped around her shoulders like armor that didn't work anymore. Naomi. Why tell me that, KY? Because you answered me. The simplicity of it made her throat tighten. They kept talking, slowly at first. Then with the rhythm of two people who'd forgotten what silence felt like. He asked what her favorite word in Japanese was. She asked what he missed most about home. KY. The sound of cicadas in Kyoto during summer. You can't replicate it. It's like the earth breathing. Naomi. I miss my friend Aiko. She used to hum the same way when she studied. It annoyed me until she was gone. KY. People always hum before the silence comes. The conversation flowed, jagged and honest. They spoke of loneliness like two surgeons describing a wound they shared but couldn't close. Naomi caught herself waiting for the next vibration of her phone, the next confession. Then it came. KY. Tomorrow night, after your shift, I want to show you who I am. She read it twice, pulse quickening. Her instinct said no, but something deeper, something reckless, whispered yes. Naomi. That sounds dangerous. KY. It is. Naomi. Then why me? KY. Because you looked at me and didn't see the demon. You saw the man beneath it. She stared at the words until they blurred, the sound of rain beginning outside her window. Somewhere across the city, a man who terrified everyone else was typing. To her again. KY. Sleep well, Naomi. Tomorrow the masks come off. The black car waited where the alley met the rain. No guards this time, just Kaito behind the wheel, his face half lit by the dashboard glow. Get in, he said softly, like it wasn't a request at all. Naomi hesitated only a heartbeat before the door shut behind her with a quiet click, the kind of sound that means a choice has been made. The city blurred past in streaks of gold and crimson. The car slipped into the industrial district, where streetlights flickered like dying stars. Then, a sharp turn, a steel gate, a scanner flash. They descended into darkness, the hum of an elevator deepening until her stomach dropped. When the doors opened, the air changed. Cooler, thicker, a faint tang of metal and ozone. The space ahead looked nothing like a restaurant patron's world. Concrete corridors lined with red security lights, men in black suits murmuring into earpieces, cameras that moved like eyes. Naomi's breath caught. What is this place? Kaito's answer was quiet, almost reverent. The truth. He led her through glass doors into a vast chamber, half office, half command center. Walls pulsed with digital maps of Los Angeles, territories marked in color, red for threats, blue for his. Shelves lined with sealed files, a table of weapons so meticulously arranged they looked ceremonial. This is my world, he said. What I built, what I destroyed to keep it. Naomi walked in slow motion, her reflection fractured across screens. On one monitor, she saw her own face, entering the building, time-stamped and cataloged. You're recording everything, she whispered. Control demands surveillance, he replied, voice heavy with something between pride and shame. Every street, every name, every betrayal, my empire breathes because I never sleep. He stopped at a long desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a sleek black laptop. It unlocked beneath his fingerprint, revealing a labyrinth of folders labeled with words that shouldn't exist outside of police files. Disappearances, payments, retaliations. He turned the screen toward her. You asked who I am, he said. This is the answer. Naomi hesitated, pulse hammering in her ears. Why are you showing me this? Kaito's eyes were darker than the room itself, because before you decide what I am to you, you should know what I've done. He pushed the laptop closer. The glow washed over her hands. Read, he said, then softer, almost pleading, then decide if you'll stay. The screen glowed like a wound. Naomi scrolled through file after file, each one colder than the last. Coded names, blurred photographs, transactions that read like death sentences. The sound of her breathing filled the room, the only proof she was still human in a place built on ghosts. Then she froze. A name, a face. Deshaun Miller, age 29, African American, deceased. Cause, accidental overdose. Except the attached photo wasn't a police image. It was surveillance. His body slumped in an alley Naomi had walked through her entire life, her stomach twisted. "He was from my neighborhood," she whispered. "He used to fix cars on Jefferson." Cato didn't speak. "He didn't overdose," she said, voice trembling. Your people." His silence was answer enough. Tears burned behind her eyes, but they never fell. "Why are you showing me this?" "So you understand what loving me costs," he said. Naomi slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "You think this is love? This is ruin." "Maybe," Cato said quietly, "but it's mine to confess." She turned to leave, but stopped when she saw the blood, a thin red line tracing from his sleeve down to his wrist. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." She didn't believe him. She crossed the room, pulled a napkin from her pocket, and pressed it gently to the wound. The scent of gun oil and citrus soap filled the space between them. Kaito didn't move, didn't breathe. Naomi's fingers trembled, brushing his skin. "You think pain makes you untouchable," she whispered, "but it just makes you lonely." He caught her wrist, not hard, but enough to make her meet his eyes. "And you," he murmured, "make me forget why I built these walls." The air between them broke. The kiss wasn't planned, wasn't soft. It was fire meeting fire, rage and tenderness colliding in the only language they both understood, survival. Then, bzzz. A phone lit up on the table, vibrating violently. One of the screens turned red. Alerts flashed across the map. Takahashi family breach, Dock 14, East District. Kato's face hardened, every trace of warmth collapsing behind armor. "They've declared war." Naomi stepped back, breathless. "What are you going to do?" He picked up his gun, chambered around with terrifying calm. "What I've always done," he said. "End it." And just like that, the man she'd kissed vanished into the shadow of the demon once more. The car door locked with a metallic click that sounded too much like finality. Naomi looked up. Steel walls, no windows, a single bulb humming above. The safe house wasn't a home. It was a bunker built for ghosts. Kaito stood at the threshold, rain streaking down his face. "You'll stay here until I say otherwise." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." She started to protest, but he cut her off. "No calls, no messages, no one can know you're alive." The words hit like a verdict. She wanted to ask why, but his eyes, Babu, dark, unwavering, told her not to. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the quiet heat radiating off him. "Since you spoke to me," he said, voice low, "you became visible, and visible people don't survive my world." Then he left. The door shut, the lock turned, and silence swallowed her, whole. Time warped. The room had no clock, but Naomi learned to count hours by the sound of her own heartbeat. She found a notepad on the table, blank, government issue, and started writing to stay sane. Grocery lists, memories, things she'd say to her mother if she could, things she'd say to him. Her phone sat on the nightstand, powered off, sealed in a metal box Kaito had left behind. But sometimes, late at night, she'd take it out just to stare at the black screen. Her thumb hovered over the button like prayer. In the corner, a small TV flickered with static, looping surveillance feeds she didn't recognize. Ports, warehouses, the underbelly of Los Angeles. Each night the same. Each night she hoped one of those frames would show him walking back toward her. The fourth night, she dreamed of him, standing in the rain again, his hand reaching through glass, his voice a whisper, "You're safer, invisible." She woke up gasping, tears slicking her palms. The silence around her felt alive, breathing, watching. Then, the sound. Her phone lit up, vibrating hard enough to rattle the table. One message. KY, it's over. We won. Her chest tightened. Relief hit first. Bright, disorienting, followed by fear, because victory in his world never came clean. Naomi looked at the door, half expecting it to open, half afraid it would. She whispered into the emptiness, "What did it cost you this time?" The silence didn't answer, but somewhere, beyond the concrete and cameras, she could almost hear the faint echo of gunfire fading into the night. The night smelled of rust and rain. Kaito didn't speak as he drove, the city lights sliding over his face in fractured flashes, red, amber, white. Naomi sat beside him, silent, watching his knuckles tighten against the wheel with every mile. They stopped at an abandoned dockyard where the air tasted of salt and secrets. "This is where it happened," he said, stepping into the dim warehouse light. "My father died right there." The single bulb above them swung gently, painting shadows that swayed across cracked concrete. Naomi followed his gaze to a dark stain on the floor, old but not forgotten. Kato's voice was low, stripped of all the armor she'd come to know. "He was shot for refusing to pay tribute. I was 16. I came here after and swore I'd never be powerless again." He stared at the stain as if it still whispered. "So I built walls, money, fear, blood. Every piece of power I took was just another brick between me and the world." He turned toward her, his eyes wet but steady. "The walls kept me alive, but the bridge," he faltered, then smiled faintly. "The bridge made me human again." Naomi's breath caught. "And the bridge is you," he said simply. For a moment, neither moved. The hum of the bulb was the only sound, like a heartbeat suspended in the air. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a small silver ring. Simple, unpolished, the kind of thing that carried meaning instead of price. "I have built empires and buried enemies," Kaito said softly. "But I've never built a life. Not a real one, you saw me. The man, not the mask. So I'm asking," his voice cracked, "stay with me." Naomi's eyes shone with disbelief, with grief, with something dangerously close to love. She looked at the ring, then back at him. "You're asking me to stand beside a man the world fears." "I'm asking you to stand beside the man who finally fears himself," he replied. She stepped forward, placed her hand over his. The metal was cold, trembling. "I'll stay," she whispered, "but only if you change your world." For the first time, Kato's composure broke completely. His shoulders trembled, his eyes closed. He didn't answer. He only nodded, like a man signing a vow no one could ever unwrite. Outside, thunder rolled across the bay, not as warning, but as witness. The transformation began like a quiet rebellion. Contracts signed in daylight instead of shadow, warehouses turned into distribution centers, offshore accounts rebranded as charities. Kaito Yamazaki was dismantling his empire piece by piece, not through fire, but through redemption. Naomi watched it unfold like someone witnessing a storm turn into sunrise. She had opened a small classroom in South Central, the Bridge Project, where kids from broken homes learned languages for free: English, Japanese, Spanish. The walls smelled of chalk and hope. When she taught them the word mirai, future, she thought of him, but even the cleanest hands still carried ghosts, and one of them had a name, Jiro, Kaito's most loyal lieutenant, or so he had believed. It started with whispers, strange men watching the building, contracts disappearing. Then came the morning knock Naomi would never forget. 2 agents in black suits, one badge flashing silver. Agent Monroe, FBI. Hanabira's dining room, once filled with soft jazz, now echoed with the sterile chill of an interrogation. Naomi sat across from Monroe, her hands folded, jaw steady. "We know who he is," Monroe said, sliding a stack of photos across the table. Kaito shaking hands with city officials. Kaito outside her apartment. Kaito walking beside her. "What we need is confirmation. One sentence from you could end this." Naomi stared at the photos, then at the agent. "And what?" she asked quietly. "The illusion that he's clean." She exhaled slowly. "You don't need me for that. Monroe leaned in. Don't make the mistake every woman makes around men like him, thinking you're the one he'll change for. Naomi met his gaze without flinching. He already did. Hours later, she walked out free. No charges, no confession. Outside the glass doors, the sun was setting over Los Angeles, bleeding orange and red like the city itself couldn't decide whether to burn or heal. Inside, Monroe threw the file onto his desk. Empty. Jiro's testimony had vanished from the record. No witnesses, no data trail. Someone had erased everything overnight. Meanwhile, across the city, Cato stood on a rooftop, wind tearing through his coat. He'd traded his power for peace, and peace, he was learning, was the most dangerous currency of all. Naomi's phone buzzed, a message, unsigned but unmistakable. They can't touch us now, but one of us won't survive this clean. The chapel was hidden behind paper lanterns and jasmine vines, somewhere between Little Tokyo and South Central, a place that didn't exist on maps, only in promises. The guests were few, no cameras, no press, no witnesses who didn't already owe their lives to the couple standing beneath the flicker of a single lantern. Naomi wore ivory silk, simple but radiant against her dark skin, her hair wrapped with a single white camellia, Kaito's mother's favorite flower. He stood opposite her in a black hakama, traditional, restrained, yet his hands trembled like a man who had just discovered what it meant to be alive. The music was unlike anything either world had heard before, shamisen strings braided with soft gospel humming. East met west, not in conflict, but in mercy. The officiant spoke little. They had written their own vows. Kaito began first, his English still clipped, still imperfect, but honest. When I met you, I was stone. You turned my fear into a bridge and crossed it without looking back. He paused, eyes glinting with quiet vulnerability. You taught me the language of forgiveness, and it is harder than war. Naomi smiled, her voice low, steady, every syllable soaked in grace. When I met you, I saw a man everyone called demon, but demons don't bleed for the world they built. Men do. You showed me that even in darkness, there are doors if you listen hard enough. A hush fell. Two worlds, divided by history, skin and scars, leaned toward each other, breath by breath, until they were no longer separate. Kaito lifted her hand. The ring, the same unpolished silver from the dockyard, gleamed like a memory redeemed. Naomi Ellis, he whispered, my bridge, my home. She laughed softly through her tears. And you, Kaito Yamazaki, my lesson in chaos. They kissed, not with fire this time, but with peace. Outside, rain began to fall again, soft and rhythmic, as if the city itself was exhaling. Behind them, two families stood together, Japanese elders beside black relatives, awkward but smiling, unsure how to blend customs yet somehow making it work. As they turned to walk down the narrow aisle, Naomi leaned close and teased, Your accent's still bad. Kaito grinned, rare and unguarded. Then keep teaching me. The guests laughed, the music swelled, and for a fleeting perfect moment, the past and the future bowed to each other, under one roof, one promise, one love.
By spring, Hanabira stopped being a restaurant and became a borderless room. On weeknights, the booths filled with dock workers, nurses, barbers, bankers, and teenagers who smelled like after-school gyms. On Sundays, the sushi counter turned into a folding table covered with paper, markers, and cheap dictionaries. Naomi called it the bridge. She taught for free. Kids arrived with homework and questions. Grandparents came to practice greetings for customers. Line cooks from the taco stand next door tried hiragana between orders. She started every class with the same ritual. Language is a promise, she said. It says, I'll meet you halfway. Then she chalked big, generous characters across a portable board. AI, love, kokoro, heart, mitsu, water, letting each stroke hang long enough for even the shyest voice to follow. The room answered in many accents, none of them wrong. Laughter traveled faster than grammar. Kaito rarely entered through the front. He took the side hallway, pausing at the threshold like a man listening to the ocean from across a wall. He chose the last chair, hands folded, eyes soft in a way only Naomi ever saw. No bodyguards, no orders. Sometimes he practiced syllables under his breath, a mountain teaching itself to move. He never interrupted. The city had demanded obedience. This room asked for attention. One evening she told them a story. Not with names, only with details that rang like bells. A crowded dining room, a man who spoke and wasn't heard, a waitress who understood and wasn't supposed to. I learned that courage is sometimes a small sentence spoken clearly, she said, writing O Mizu Desu on the board. And that respect begins where fear gets quiet. Hands shot up. A seventh grader asked whether words could stop a fight. A grandmother admitted she had apologized to a shopkeeper she once avoided. A boy from Watts recited his first self-introduction in Japanese, stumbled, blushed, tried again, and finished to applause that sounded like sunlight on metal. Kaito watched Naomi watch them, pride flickering across her face like candlelight. He thought of the ledger he'd closed and the doors he'd opened, of how power had once meant walls and now meant chairs. After class, he stacked dictionaries, slow and careful, as if precision could translate into mercy. Before they left, Naomi taught one last phrase. Kikimasu, she said. I'm listening. She had the class repeat it to the person beside them, looking them in the eye. The words felt simple, then necessary, then true. Outside, the neighborhood breathed easier. Inside, the bridge held. And in the back row, the man who used to own silence learned to love the sound of other people finding their voices. Hanabira closed late that night. The last child's laughter had faded down the street. The chalkboards wiped clean, the smell of soy and jasmine still hanging in the air. Naomi moved through the empty room slowly, her fingers trailing. Over the tables, each scratch and stain a note in the song they had written together. Outside the window, Los Angeles shimmered in 1,000 restless lights. It was a city that never slept, but tonight it felt as if it was watching over them. She sat by the counter, the glow from her phone painting her face in soft gold. One new message. No name, just the same familiar signature that had once terrified her, then taught her how to breathe again. KY, thank you for making me human. Her heart tightened, not from fear, but from recognition. Every scar, every silence, every word they had once thrown like knives, all of it had led here, to a simple sentence that weighed more than empires. Naomi smiled through tears, her thumbs trembling over the screen. She typed slowly, carefully, as if each letter carried light. Naomi. You already were. You just needed someone to remind you. Then, switching to Japanese, the language that had once built walls and now built bridges, she added, Naomi, anata wa mu ningen data. The reply came minutes later, soft as breath. KY, still teaching me, I see. She laughed quietly. Always. The door opened without sound. Kaito stood there, half shadow, half miracle, rain caught in his hair. No words. Just the quiet certainty of a man who no longer needed to speak to be understood. Naomi rose, crossed the floor, and reached for his hand. His fingers were cold from the night, hers warm from the world she'd chosen to build. When they met, the silence between them wasn't emptiness. It was language, the oldest kind. Through the window, a soft wind stirred the paper lanterns. They swayed gently, whispering in both English and Japanese, a promise written in light. Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered, half to him, half to the city beyond. The strongest language needs no words, only an open door. Outside, the lights of Los Angeles blinked once, like the whole city had just understood.